Welcome, everyone. Good morning, good day. Wherever you are in your day, thank you very much for spending some time with South Carolina. We'll be talking about all things South Carolina for the next hour. You will be learning about what makes our state so special. We have some really wonderful speakers for you here today. If you are wondering where I'm standing, I'm in Columbia, South Carolina. My name is Vanessa Goschel. I'm the Managing Director for South Carolina's Department of Commerce, the Europe office. We are based in Munich, Germany. That's where I sit normally. Nicolette sits there as well. And just visiting here in South Carolina coming through. So you can have a nice picture of Columbia behind me. So let's get started. So today, you'll hear a little bit more about South Carolina in terms of location, where we are, the geography, some of the advantages of doing business in the US from a South Carolina location. And you'll hear a little bit more about what our office, the services that we provide, where we assist with companies that are based in Europe and are looking at making the leap and investing into the US market. We are here to help you evaluate South Carolina as a potential location. We'll be speaking to you about that as well. And South Carolina is always we're known for manufacturing. It's very much a manufacturing state, but we are also, the companies and the universities and the organizations that are here are very good at solving problems for companies. They're good at creating efficiencies, developing new platforms upon which businesses of the future will be built. And this innovative part of our economy will also be a part of today's hour. And we have someone here to address the innovation sector today. We also have an attorney here with us. He has been practicing in South Carolina for over 20 years, specializes in immigration services, which I know many of you, that is top of mind for many of you that are looking at coming to the US. And Garrett will be speaking a little bit more about what is involved and some of the services that his firm offers, and give you a taste of some of the experience that he's had in the past and what he really suggests how you navigate this very interesting process. A few housekeeping items before we start. Everyone will be muted on this call. If you have a question for one of our speakers, please use the chat function and type your question in. When our speakers are done towards the end of this hour, I will ask the speakers the questions that you have posed. Tomorrow, I will be sending a recording of today's session, so no need to write everything down that you're hearing today. You'll receive a copy of this tomorrow, which you can download and then watch again at your convenience. So our first speaker today, Miss Nicolette Macklin. She is my colleague in Europe. She has worked for the state of South Carolina for several years. She is multilingual. She has helped many companies make the leap from Europe to the US, and she will be giving you an overview today of South Carolina. Nicolette?
Thanks, Vanessa. It's good to be here virtually with everyone. Like Vanessa said, I'm also located in our Europe office, which is in Munich, Germany. But right now I'm actually visiting family in South Carolina, which is a lot better right now because the weather is much nicer here in South Carolina than Munich right now, because when I left it was snowing. But I'll go ahead and get us started with just kind of explaining to you about how our office can support you all. So we are here to help companies like yourselves that are interested in physically locating within the US market, whether it be for a manufacturing facility, a warehousing space, or an office space. And really our goal is to kind of take out as many question marks as possible and make the overall process of entering the US a lot easier. And so we provide customized support based on the needs of the company. And it doesn't matter if you are a big or a small company, or even if you are at the very beginning of your evaluation process. We can help you with that by providing research, for instance, on the workforce that's in South Carolina. If you have questions about who is going to be your supplier while you're in the US, we have programs put in place that will connect you with local suppliers. If you want information on taxes or just a general overview of the cost of doing business, we can provide that type of information for you. And like Vanessa said, today we have two great speakers with us as well. So we can connect you with anyone, including, a law firm or an accountant that is going to help get your operations up and running and provide you with the resources that you would need to do so as well. So just keep in mind as we go through today's presentation and as you're interacting with our office, there's just a plethora of resources that you can utilize in order to make the process a little bit easier and hopefully smoother for you as you evaluate the market. But we have a few people here that are being introduced to South Carolina for the first time. So let's get oriented on where we actually are on the map. So South Carolina is on the east coast of the US, and we sit halfway between New York City and Miami, Florida. We are a relatively small state compared to other states, but that is certainly an advantage for many of our companies because it allows us to be able to remain easily connected. You can get around the state fairly well. And also, if you're going into other markets, it's easy for you to actually leave the state in order to get to those markets as well for distributing any of your products, or if you need to reach other clients outside of the state as well. So if you are going to be looking for a strategic location, I think South Carolina is very ideal because it allows you to not only be domestically connected, but also internationally connected as well, just because of the port access, our strong infrastructure, and also the flights that you can take directly from Europe. So just to further emphasize the domestic connectivity of our state, we've included this map here that shows the US at night. And the purpose of this map is to show you by the lights indicated on the map where the US population resides. And you'll notice that majority of the US is actually on the east side of the US, and that is where South Carolina is. And so you would be within reach of 2/3 of the US population. And as you may know, typically companies go where the people are because not only is that going to be a big access for workforce, but also where the other companies are. If you are providing direct to other companies, you would have the ease of that network by locating within South Carolina. So South Carolina has also just a number of highway and interstates that go throughout it. We also have access to rail, which is slightly different in the US compared to Europe, just because it's mainly used by our manufacturers. And we also are home to the most efficient port on the East Coast, and that is the Port of Charleston. And so it is actually assisted by 2 inland ports that have been strategically located within the state so that companies can essentially locate anywhere within South Carolina and still have ease of access to all of the port amenities. So whether you are going to be importing or exporting or just generally transporting any type of raw materials or finished products, you would easily be able to do that from within South Carolina. So South Carolina's location is an advantage to many companies, but it's also a great location for European-based companies simply because we have a history of supporting them with their entry and also continuous expansions within the North American market as a whole. And South Carolina has more than 500 European-owned facilities that employ about 90,000 people within the state. And the benefits of this for your company could be networking opportunities, getting advice from companies that have gone through a similar process as you, or you could actually have the opportunity of supplying to perhaps the US subsidiary of a company that you may already be supplying to here in Europe. And we do have several Scandinavian-owned facilities throughout the state. We have a little more than 50 of these, and these companies range from big and small and also across all industries. And this could be used for you as a reference of what it's like as a Scandinavian company specifically to operate within the state of South Carolina. So the range of industries that the Scandinavian-owned companies represent reflects the range of industries that are throughout the state. And so, as Vanessa said earlier, we are a manufacturing state. We make a lot of things, and we make things as big as automobiles and airplanes to medical devices and software. So our state has capabilities that can be used across multiple industries at a time. And we have a robust supply chain for our industries because of that. And many of our growing industries we've put here to show you, and they are also supported by cluster organizations as well. And so there's just one that is not listed here, and that is our tech sector. This is a growing sector for the state, and we do actually have a cluster organization that has been put in place to help advance those developments as well. So if you are in the tech sector, there are opportunities for you within the state, and I think perhaps you'll also hear a little bit about that and how it intertwines with innovation when Laura speaks later on as well. South Carolina is also a very business-friendly state. Our state motto is even that South Carolina is just right for business. And really that's because we have put in place a lot of different measures to make sure that the businesses within South Carolina can run effectively and be successful. And so, for instance, our state income tax is one of the lowest within the region. We have a 5% state income tax. We have some of the lowest operating costs within the Southeast region, which include construction costs, industrial power rates. There are opportunities for sales tax exemptions. And then there's just an overall low cost of living that will play a role for you, not only when maintaining your workforce, but also it gives you the opportunity to be able to recruit talent even from other states, because there are always people that are moving into South Carolina just because of the friendliness of the environment and the cost of living within the state as well. And so when it comes to your workforce, South Carolina does have a number of different programs that have been put into place in order to help our companies, not only when they move to the state, but also helping them to think later down the line, because we want you to continue to be successful, 10 to 15 years down the line, and that requires having a workforce put in place for that. And so we are working together on a government level with the education system as well with the local industry in order to achieve this. So, for instance, in order for us to build the pipeline, we have programs such as Apprenticeship Carolina and SC Future Makers that connects the students within the grade school system with the local industry to get them up to date with what skills are going to be needed to help guide them into different programs after grade school. We also have a very good technical college system to where there is a local technical college within reach of every community, so that they are easily feeding people into the local industry from there. And there are opportunities even for companies to be able to partner with the technical colleges to make sure that the lesson plans and the skill sets being taught are ones that can be easily used, at least at entry level, when the students graduate. And then we also have our universities that are partnering with the industry as well to make sure the skill sets there are what is needed within the industry or the future of the industry as well. Then for training development, the state has a number of different programs as well there to help not only to continue to build the pipeline, but also for when you get your operations up and running, or if you need to retrain any of your employees later on. And so one of those programs is called Ready SC. And this is a customized workforce development program that is tailored to the company. And it's not a grant program, but it is an incentive that is provided for qualifying companies where they will train, they'll recruit, they'll screen, they will even create a mini job site for you so that you have a pool of applicants that have been trained to your standards that you can then hire from later on. And then the last thing that I want to mention is that the support that comes to you in this process and while you're trying to get up and running is great, but we also put a focus on supporting our companies even after they land within the state. And I think we do that very well, so much to the point where we have a specific division within our agency that is solely dedicated to those efforts. And so even in our Europe office, we're connecting with our European-based headquarters that have subsidiaries within the state to make sure that they are running smoothly and making sure that they're staying up to date on any resources that are coming up into the state. And so just a few of those different types of things that would be available to you as an existing South Carolina business includes access to market intelligence. There is support for the workforce, supplier development. So if you are looking for local suppliers, or even if you want to become a local supplier for someone, there's a program put into place where you can participate and interact with that group. There's also recycling assistance. So if you need to know where to take your products after, where to recycle them after, there's some people there that can help guide you in that process as well. And then even exporting assistance. So we know that we're helping you enter the US market and hopefully through South Carolina, but there are other markets, of course, aside from Europe and the US. And so we have people within the agency that can help to identify new markets outside of the US or Europe so that you can venture out into those areas as well. And so essentially with South Carolina, you always have a point of contact on the state level at the beginning of your process, once you land in your process, and then also after you land, hopefully within South Carolina, there's always someone there to make sure you have the resources you need to maintain your success and hopefully grow even bigger than what you may have initially thought of. So with that, I will end here and hope that we are able to speak with each of you individually, because we know that all of you are in different parts of your process and you require different things in order to make you successful. And so speaking with Vanessa or myself or anyone at the Department of Commerce, we will be able to help identify what resources would be available to you in South Carolina in order to help you to be successful. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicolette. That was a lot of information. What I love about South Carolina is they have been so proactive over the years in building these programs. It's really, for the companies that are on the call today, it's not just, can we land your business? This state really is very serious about making sure that you succeed once you get here. And they have instituted all of these programs for that very purpose. So it's a very proactive state. We're small enough where we can find the right people very easily, as Nicolette mentioned. So thank you very much for that overview, Nicolette. A lot of great information. Next is Laura McIntosh. Laura also works for the Department of Commerce here in South Carolina. Laura is the Managing Director for the Office of Innovation. So she has spent her career working in this space, she has worked for 4 years in this role, but she has worked statewide in many other roles in technology, innovation, and this is really her expertise. So Laura, you're up.
Here we go. Thanks, Nicolette and Vanessa, for the chance to participate in the call. I have a very ambitious task of trying to give a really big overview of the innovation and science technology community for the state, and I actually feel like they do a better job speaking for themselves. So I have a handful of very short videos to show you all, and then I will kind of break down each one of these individuals, and hopefully by the end of this 15 minutes or so, you have just a small flavor of sort of the thriving engineering and corporate R&D activity happening across the state. So Nicolette, I believe, can you go ahead and progress to the first small video? So I actually, when I joined Commerce about, like Vanessa said, about 4 years ago, I actually looked at our secretary and asked him what might be an odd question for the new director of an office, which is, what is innovation? I feel like it's a word that's so overused to a point, it's clickbait and a buzzword of sorts. And so we kicked that word back out to stakeholders from across the state. And I have a point to this story. The point is, after about 2 hours of colorful debate, for the state, it served as sort of our North Star. You know, we consider innovation the relentless pursuit of transformational ideas. So we don't limit it to a digital technology or something that you'd see on a screen. My office is about helping any size operation or within even the academic setting actually get their technology out of a lab and into the marketplace. And we lead the ecosystem development to help actually institute and create those opportunities for it. So I am actually now gonna, we have one other small video. So Nicolette, if you wanna go ahead and progress to the next one, and we'll talk about a specific case study. There we go. So I think what's really important to note with ChartsFan, and this founder in particular, John Michael Carter, they are not from, he and his brother are co-founders of ChartsFan, and they are actually not from the state. They are originally from Texas. And they came here for an accelerator that was sponsored by the Mayo Clinic. And through that experience and just the overall local and actually state incentives that were offered to them, they decided to stay. And so they are based in the upstate, but they have over 300 employees. They've raised $37 million in venture funds. And so my point in really referencing them is, even if you are starting small, that we have a real thriving community that wants to see companies like this succeed and work alongside them to actually help them scale. Then in addition to sort of the incentives, as Nicolette sort of mentioned earlier, even the workforce, they have needed a lot of actual nursing expertise. And so they have been connected with the technical schools and have different sort of credentialing and certifications in place to help sort of streamline and expedite that process for them, because they were growing so rapidly. So this is just sort of one sort of entrepreneurial side of how we support innovation in the state. Nicolette, if you want to go ahead and progress to the next video. So Dr. Rami Herrick is one of the many professors, research professors at the USC McNair Aerospace Center. And what's really particularly noteworthy about this facility is that they're actually home to the only carbon fiber placement machine that's at industry scale. So any kind of testing or services that you may need in that regard, you would be doing at the actual size of your execution, not having to be a scaled down version. But in addition to that, overall, their management they work with over 50 plus partners, and a lot of this, most of those are industry, everything from Boeing to IBM. And they're also part of the state's Fraunhofer Alliance. So any of you that have interest in sort of participating at that kind of level, that we have models under the Fraunhofer Alliance to do projects like that. And in general, sort of the main 4 focus areas at USC as it relates to the Aerospace Center are the composites, combustion, predictive maintenance, and unmanned vehicles. So the McNair Aerospace Center just represents, gosh, I couldn't even, countless sort of other similar facilities that are world-class throughout the whole state, that are very much open for business and want to be collaborating with industry on collaborative research projects, workforce development, and any kind of even specific problems you may be experiencing in your actual facility should you come to the state. So anyways, I've got one more really short video. Nicolette, if you want to go ahead and progress forward. So Blackbaud is one of our largest sort of corporate tech entities here in the state. They are based in Charleston, but they are also an interesting story is that they're not originally from here. They relocated from New York, mainly due to just the high overcost of building an organization like theirs in New York. So they've been here since '89. They went public in 2004, and now they're over a 3,000 global organization. Like I said, their headquarters right outside of Charleston. But I think one of the most important things to note about them is that they represent just one of several reasons why CompTIA has recently released a report estimating that we expect 3,000 new jobs in technology over the coming year, and that as a percentage is the third highest in the US. So this is not only an overall growing sector, we have data to back it up. And because of that, this was mentioned a little bit earlier, but this is part of one of the many projects that do sit under me at Commerce, which is something known as SD codes. The state recognizes this growth area, and we're trying to make sure that there is a talent pipeline for it. So we have designed an actual coding academy that is for adult driven. And so anyways, we work alongside with industry to have designed that platform. And now we've and it's still only about 3 years in existence, we've had over 15,000 individuals use this, and it's completely free. So my point of referencing it is the state is fully committed to finding where are their pain points in this process and building the resources to ensure success. Nicolette, you can go to the last slide. And so that really brings me to sort of, if there's just one thing you take away from this, that is my office is set up to help ensure that the state is not only deep in domain expertise as it relates to the building or the manufacturing, but that we are innovating here, and that as the lead economic development organization, we are consistently looking at other states and countries. What are they doing to solve some of these issues? And at the end of the day, helping organizations like yours get your new technology out into the marketplace. And whether that be within a quintessential startup, the academic, sort of applied research, or of course, big corporate, we are here to cater to that need. And so with that, I'm done. Nicolette, I think just one last slide there. If you enjoyed those videos and would love to watch more and get to know, hopefully after those, you just got a flavor of the culture for innovation and technology that does exist here. There's way more of them online at scribblesc.com, and just a few other reference links that you can feel free to peruse after it is sent out. But I appreciate the time this morning, or afternoon, I guess, where you all are. And so I yield the floor.
Thank you, Laura. That was really wonderful. Great information, a lot of information. If anyone has any questions for Laura, please feel free to type your question into the chat bubble there on the side of your screen. Our next speaker, Garrett Steck, is an attorney here in South Carolina. Born and bred? Born and bred in South Carolina?
Not born, but been here for many years.
Got it. Garrett's expertise, as I mentioned earlier, is immigration, and he will be speaking to us today about what his office, what types of services he offers, and what the trends are on the immigration front, and what's happening with some of these programs that have been in the news lately, particularly in the European countries. Garrett, take it away.
Thank you, Vanessa. Good afternoon, and thank everyone for joining us. If you've listened intently and are interested in visiting South Carolina to learn more, more than likely you will be faced with immigration, inbound immigration. You have many options to visit the United States. You can visit the United States temporarily using your passport via ESTA. You can also travel as a business visitor or tourist in B1 status, student status, internship, trainee programs, and most importantly, employment-based immigration, such as E1, E2, treaty trader, treaty investor visas, L1, intra-company transferee visas, and H1B specialized knowledge visas. All of these visas or all these options have different requirements. More than likely, with the exception of traveling via ESTA, you will visit the local U.S. embassy or a consular post in your country. However, that sounds very simple, but in light of the COVID-19, I guess, global pandemic has impacted travel to the US very significantly. Most recently, we've had a change of administration, presidential administrations. There's been numerous proclamations that have restricted all types of inbound immigration. But today we're just going to briefly hit or discuss Presidential Proclamation 10143. So we could go next slide, please. This proclamation dated January 25th, President Biden, one of the first proclamations he issued, basically continued the Trump era COVID-19 14-day travel ban. Next slide, please. So you're probably, if anyone's been interested in traveling or has need to travel for business purposes, you've noticed that for the last year, it's been extremely difficult to enter the United States, specifically from the Schengen zone countries, because of this 14-day travel ban. And that basically says if you are in any of the lighter blue shaded countries, which make up or compose the Schengen area, plus the United Kingdom, Ireland, and then we'll add Brazil, and then most recently South Africa. If you are in any of those countries in the past 14 days, you cannot travel directly to the United States. That seems, fairly straightforward. A number of clients have had to travel to other countries that are not restricted and try to enter the US. But where this has gotten or has become difficult is that the embassy will not allow or will not process an application for a visa because of this proclamation. So right now, next slide, please. Unless you are a student, an investor, basically a researcher, public health, government official, crew member, family member of a US citizen or lawful permanent resident, in some instances, those needing medical treatment, those are the only groups where you can enter the US with this proclamation. I'll note the last bullet point on the right-hand side. Others whose travel is in the US national interest for economic or national security reasons. That has become the national interest exception, which is sort of a waiver that is a consular discretionary function that if you satisfy the national interest exception or requirements, they will allow you to process, obtain your visa, and allow you to enter the country not subject to the 14-day travel ban. Next slide, please. And this is where things have gotten very, very confusing, very difficult, and very frustrating, is that the national interest exception allowed technical experts, which would be manufacturing engineers, individuals coming in for commission, install, deliver, set up equipment or warranty service work to come in, specialists, senior level managers, executives, treaty traders and investors, professional athletes, all were able to apply under the national interest exception, obtain their visa, and come into the United States, again, with some restrictions, but that was the process that occurred up until basically the end of February. And then with very little introduction or background, on March 2nd of this year, the Secretary of State issued a new directive that completely changed the national interest exception basis. Effective immediately on that date, the NIE was only available to those travelers seeking to support critical infrastructure sectors. So before, if you're a technical expert, specialist, etc., basically, unless you are coming in to support a critical infrastructure sector, the NIE is no longer being issued and you're basically not able to travel. So next slide, please. So what is a critical infrastructure? Well, of course, the US government has defined through one of its agencies or identified 16 critical sectors whose assets, systems, networks are vital to the United States, that incapacitation or destruction would have a debilitating effect on the security, national economic security, public health, safety, or combination. So what we've looked at, next slide, please, is what are critical infrastructure sectors? Here are the sectors that the government has listed that are basically the only allowable sectors where right now the national interest exception is viable. And again, some are very specific, some are very broad. For example, a number of clients, a number of suppliers, technology, they fall under the, you can look at commercial facility sector, you can look at basically IT sectors, and more importantly, critical manufacturing sectors. Those are fairly broad, so you would want to see if, in fact, your company can fit into one of these sectors. I have a number of clients, international companies, that obviously it's critical to bring personnel in and out of the United States, and this national interest exception has been very problematic. Some customers or some clients have been able to pursue these national interest exceptions successfully, even with the critical infrastructure, i.e. critical manufacturing, ties into transportation, ties into other critical sectors. And this is done through basically a letter. Traditionally, if you were coming to the US in a non-visa capacity, you would have an invitation letter, either by the US-based company or by the company that you work for abroad, to send you here and describe the reason or the purpose for why you are entering the United States. Now with this critical infrastructure, you need to almost define where your company fits, why you fit into the critical infrastructure, and why this trip is necessary. Simply coming into the US to attend a meeting, despite being critical infrastructure, is not sufficient. There has to be a purpose behind the travel. And just as a note, that if the national interest exception is approved, again, it's an embassy, consular official discretionary decision made at the time of the application. If you are approved, you are only allowed to enter the United States one time, and you must enter within 30 days. Otherwise, you would need to reapply for new ESTA certification. And for example, I will just mention, I have one client that's in a luxury goods market, and they have been told by the embassy, as a manufacturer, they're not critical manufacturing. Luxury goods are not critical currently. So we've had to look at other options for them. So next slide, please. There is a separate national interest exception that is outside of the critical infrastructure, and that is for the creation or preservation of US jobs. Obviously, COVID-19 2020 impacted a number of industries. Not only are people temporarily laid off, furloughed, working from home, a lot of changes that have impacted operations, and in some instances have impacted companies to the point of financial, there's been financial issues where management, senior management, or even ownership, foreign ownership, would want to come into the United States, and for example, to restructure, to talk about restructuring, to talk about what they need to do to strengthen their economic base. These individuals, if they don't serve a critical infrastructure sector, cannot easily enter the United States, again, even for business, necessary business meetings. So there is a separate national interest exception that has been sort of worked out in the last few months, that is creation or preservation of US jobs. And what this means is that, exactly as I mentioned before, that due to COVID, due to disruptions in manufacturing chain and supply chains, something has impacted your business. And if you cannot get over here, it is critical to bring over experts, consultants, senior level management, financial, to try to save the company. And if that is a reason to be here, that it is for either to create jobs or to preserve jobs, i.e. save your company, you can apply for a national interest exception. This is not made by the consular official at the US Embassy or consular post in a foreign country. It is sent by the consular official to Washington, D.C., to the Department of State to actually review your request, make a determination, send it back to the embassy or consular post, and allow you to enter the United States. So obviously, this is taking a lot of time. And this also requires the submission of a lot of documentation, not typically an invitation letter that justifies why you need the individual here and how you fit into the critical infrastructure sector. This would be more of financials, forecasts, a lot of information that is sent again to the United States for a determination, then returned to the embassy if favorable, for a favorable determination. So it is available. It is extremely time consuming. I would most likely, the last one that we have used has taken more than 30 days. But in the course of the last year, there's been a lot of other disruptions to travel. So this is something that is out there right now that is available. Next slide, please. So as of the 16th, U.S. embassies on their website still have the banner heading or header that says they remain unable to resume routine visa operations, and they only are prioritizing services for U.S. citizens. And due to COVID restrictions, waiting room capacity is down, and they cannot process non-immigrant visa applications. All that means is that when you used to be able to register in advance via ESTA, book your ticket, and travel to the United States under ESTA for 90 days for a business meeting, or even for tourism purposes, that is not happening anymore. That is taking a longer period of time due to the proclamation. Business visas are taking a significantly longer period of time. So plan in advance, consult you or your company's attorney if there is an issue with the national interest exception. If anyone's helping with visa applications, understand what it's going to take in advance or up above what is normally required to obtain the national interest exception to be able to come into the United States. And of course, in order to enter the United States, you either have to have a negative COVID test, then there's vaccinations. I've got a number of clients that are traveling to the United States solely for vaccinations. Different countries have different rollouts, and it's more difficult to obtain the vaccination. So people are traveling, despite what you may hear. It's not as easy as it historically has been. It's been made much more problematic by the March 2nd proclamation. There are some ways around that. Next slide, please. So don't be discouraged. I'll start with the bottom bullet point, is that there are rumors of a travel ban termination. The world has got to get back at some point to some normalcy. International business is critical. And with international business does require individuals to travel. So there is talk that may terminate this summer. There may be changes to the national interest exception, so it's always good to be aware of what is happening. And then just because, again, there have been numerous proclamations and bans for travel and that have impacted US-bound immigration, just note under the new presidential administration has issued or rescinded certain proclamations. Other proclamations have expired on their own terms. Travel ban from Muslim countries has been terminated. Rescission of Proclamation 114, the immigrant visa ban. So that is the green card process. That effectively stopped for 12 months, where unless you were in the United States, you could not obtain a green card in any category because of this ban. So that now has terminated. And most recently, 152 was the non-immigrant ban, which banned the consulates from issuing H-1B visas, L-1 visas, J visas, and earlier this last year, F-1 student visas. So that is now terminated. So there is definitely some hope on the horizon that right now, the only restriction is the travel ban, the 14-day travel ban. There are ways to get around the ban if you have an existing visa, if you fit in one of the categories, or you apply for national interest exception as critical infrastructure, or basically economic preservation. So there are different ways to travel. Again, it's going to take time, some effort. It will be frustrating, but we will get through this, and hopefully the travel ban will terminate, or there'll be some changes to the national interest exception that'll again allow a bit easier access. So it is something that, like I said, you need to be aware of. But as we've seen, things change. They change almost in the last year, have changed almost on a monthly basis, and probably will continue to do so going forward. So don't be discouraged. We would love to have you visit us in South Carolina. There are a number of ways that we could ultimately get you here, and we'd love to see you. Next slide, please. So just as a quick comment, immigration, through our firm, we help bring people and goods into and out of the United States, both with visas for individuals and for goods, import-export licensing and assistance with international shipping. It is something that has been impacted over the course of the last year, but we are seeing movement, and that's a good thing. So we appreciate your time today. If there's any questions, please let us know. There's my contact information. Please feel free to email.
Thanks very much, Garrett. We do not have any questions at this time, but Garrett, I wonder if you could share with the companies on the call, for those that are very early in the process and looking at planning their US market entry, how early should they start talking to someone like you? What does the timeline look like for some of those programs? Can it take up to a year to get a decision? Can it be, 6 months? Do you have anything to share for people on the call?
Well, different visas, let's just back up. Let's go pre-COVID. Obviously anyone from the Schengen zone countries can travel to the United States via ESTA on their passport. Basically takes a reservation and that's about it. Obviously now that is requiring NIE clearance. That is taking approximately 30 days, and that's from your submission. Some have received clearance in a few days, others a few weeks. But I would plan on at least a 30-day window to get your invitation letters together, explain the critical infrastructure connection, explain the need to be here. We have a lot of technical engineers that have to be here. There's equipment that's manufactured in Europe that there's issues here. There's setup, commissioning, warranty, service work that we need to bring people here for. And when a production line is shut down, that could lead to potential, temporary job loss, for example. And with tier 1, tier 2 suppliers, it's a cascading effect. So you want to start the process early for temporary travel. For more permanent travel, meaning longer term work-based visas, you definitely need to start the process in advance. Some of the visas require pre-approval through the USCIS in the United States domestically. Other visas allow you to apply directly at the embassy or consular post in the country that you reside in. Again, with COVID, consular offices, the staffing is reduced, processing is reduced. We are just seeing somewhat of a return to normalcy as far as interviews, but no sooner than we had someone scheduled for an interview, they received notice 24 hours in advance that their appointment was canceled due to COVID changes in that particular country. Paris has been notoriously bad for that. So again, it's sort of on an embassy by embassy basis, but you want to plan it in advance. Again, 30 days for temporary travel, up to 6 months for more employment-based visas. Again, there's a lot of qualifiers and requirements that go into each as far as eligibility determination, but the COVID pandemic has hit inbound US immigration hard. And since, again, it's both domestic processing and ultimately to obtain the visa outside of the United States, you're dealing with multiple government agencies, all of which have been impacted, or if impacted, using it as a crutch to explain or justify their delay in processing. It seems, the world is sort of getting back to work. Some of these government entities seem to still be back in, last April and May timeframe, but hopefully again, that will change. But advanced planning is necessary because of this. And again, it is doable. It's just not as easy as it used to be. So plan in advance.
Well, thank you for that, and thank you for sharing that. There's a possibility that it may change in the future and get a little bit easier. I'll keep my fingers crossed for that. So we are coming up to the end of our hour. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to call me or email me. My email address is up on the screen right there. I will be sending a copy of today's presentation out to everybody. If you have a question, please feel free to reply to that email. And we wish you a wonderful rest of your day wherever you are. And thanks very much for spending your hour with us. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.